minutes, we have been talking, or later, before we have been talking about being genuinely interested for people and being able to listen. And I was also talking a little bit more about asking questions. So today, we're going to learn more about asking more and leading with questions. And we're going to see why that is important. We see in Proverbs 15, verse 28, that it says, "The heart of the righteous studieth to answer, but the mouth of the wicked poureth out evil things." So are you one that actually wants to study to answer? Do you want the heart of the righteous? Do you want to develop that heart? Well, so that's what we're going to learn today. We're going to learn about studying to answer, because many times people are just like, actually, I'm going to read the next verse. It goes perfectly. In Proverbs 18:2, it says, "A fool hath no delight in understanding, but that his heart may discover itself." So we don't want to be fools. We want to be able to delight in understanding. And how does this actually link with questions? How can the heart of the righteous study to answer? And this reminds me of Christ when he was 12 years old. It's amazing how Christ, at just that young age, he was able to teach us already so many lessons about how to treat other people, how to actually be effective missionaries. And at the age of 12, Christ had the burden of the mission for which he had come to our world. And his soul was stirred into action. And as one who would learn, he asked questions of no ordinary character, by which he flashed light into the minds of his hearers and brought them to an understanding of the prophecies and the true mission and work of the Messiah they were expecting. So it's amazing how we see that Christ was able to just start asking questions so that others can learn even more. So I would like to go more into that. So on the next slide, we see that questions, we're going to understand how questions are a golden key that can unlock hearts and minds. And that's the same thing that happened with Christ when he was talking with all those physicians and the rabbis and Pharisees. He was able to unlock the hearts and the minds, because if he was just going to come there and be like, this is giving a lot of statements and giving a lot of like, this is what's going to happen, this is what the Bible says, and kind of going as, I'm going to teach you, they wouldn't receive him. But just because he went and asked questions, they received him. They actually opened their minds, they opened their hearts. So us as missionaries, that's what we want to do. We want to be able to ask questions. We want to be able to listen to people. And the more we ask questions, actually the more we're going to be able to learn about the people we're working with. Now, I want to talk about a very important principles that I really want you to grasp. That it really shows why questions are important. Now, first of all, one of the reasons why questions are important is because when we ask questions, we can understand more of what the person is going through. Now, like we read in Proverbs 15:28, where it says, "The heart of the righteous studieth to answer," we as missionaries, which you can be a missionary where you are, you can be a missionary at home, we want to be able to know how to answer, to give calculated answers. And how in Isaiah 50 verse 4 it says that we have the tongue of the learned, to be able to give a word in due season to that which is weary. So that's what we want to be able to do, to provide to humanity, to people that are weary. So the same thing, that's why we're trying to study to answer. And the way we study to answer is by asking questions. That way the people can tell you their pain points. They can tell you what they're going through. And from there, you're going to be able to understand. And in this photo, I love this photo with the onion. You know, with questions, we're able to take those layers off. And you know how the onions, they have so many layers. This with questions, the same thing. It's like we're able to People are the same thing. They have so many layers, but with questions, we're able to get to the heart and we're able to understand. And that's the discovery process. And that's what Christ did when he was on earth. He was able to ask questions, and people were like learning more about God. They were learning more about themselves and what they're going through, have more clarity. You have more clarity as you're asking. So, and another important principle that asking question does, on the next slide, there's this quote that it says, telling creates resistance. Asking creates relationships. We want to create a genuine relationship. So that's what we want to do. The more we tell people things, the more they're going to be resistant. The more they're going to be like, no, they may be going through a hard time, but you're just telling them things that are like, no. But once you start asking questions, that creates relationship, because the person's like, wow, you truly care for me. You truly are here to know more about me. And that influence is gained. And that means that with that influence that God has entrusted you, you can be a blessing in their lives. In Philippians 2:3, I have been reading this verse a lot, but we cannot read it enough. And it says, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. We usually want to just speak and tell, and just whenever we think we know what the person is going through, we're just going to be like, here we go, like all these things we're going to be sharing. But in order to truly be able to ask questions and to listen, like, we truly need to remember that in loneliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. We already read that a fool have no delight in understanding, but that his heart may discover itself. So let's not do that, and let's follow Philippians 2:3. Now, let's learn why are questions a valuable communication technique. So first, it helps us to avoid false assumptions. Whenever we ask, we're able to understand more of what the person is saying. Doesn't it happen to you that many times you're in a conversation and you think you understood what the person said and you're assuming things in your mind, but actually the person wasn't even trying to communicate that? Well, with questions, you're able to really get out of a world of troubles. And also it helps us to understand a person's thoughts, position, or condition. So again, we're able to just understand more of where is this person coming from? What are they talking about? What's their position in this matter that we're talking about? What's the condition? And then questions are not used only to acquire information, but to also engage a person in considering our defense. So, many times we're like, if we truly want to make a point and we're trying to teach something, sometimes as Bible workers, when we're doing Bible studies, we're going to see that questions, being able to ask questions, they're our friends. Because as we read before, telling creates resistance, but questions creates relationships. So with this, the same thing. Whenever we're trying to make a point, in order for you to make a point, the best way is to ask the person questions so that they can come to the same conclusion with their words. So they are truly taking that ownership. So also questions are valuable in answering questions. And we're going to see more about that in an example. And then questions are essential in order to teach. Like I said before, whenever we ask a question, that really engages the brain of a person so much more than when they're just listening to somebody tell them things. Whenever we ask a question, it's kind of like the brain mechanism just starts moving even harder, and it starts thinking, it starts imagining, it starts reasoning from cause to effect, and that's what we want. You're empowering a person to be able to think for themselves and to be able to find an answer and to be able to understand even more what you're trying to teach. So some examples from the Bible. There's here to seek clarity in Matthew 13:51. It says, Jesus saith unto them, Have ye understood all these things? They say unto him, Yea, Lord. So always make sure whenever you're in a conversation, remember, ask the person, does that make sense? Did that answer your question? What did you think I was actually trying to say? What did you think, asking those kind of questions is going to help you to see if the person understood what you were saying correctly. Like for us, like we work in ministry, many times we like ask for help. We tell people, can you help me with this? This is the project that I need. And then many times the person's like, yeah, I understand. And then the project is done in a different way. And it's like, why did that happen? And it's like, oh, I should have asked the question. So what do you think you're going to be doing? What did you understand? Did I answer your question? And whenever we did that, it's like there was so much more clarity and expectations were met. And the same thing in family, the same thing mothers, whenever they're asking their children to do something, it's like, ask them, did you understand? What do you think you're going to be doing? Or questions like that if the person actually understood. And then in teaching, Matthew 7:3, and why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thy own eye? Just asking this question, like he could have just said a statement over there. It's like, well, if you behold, why do you behold this is still a question, but imagine this in a statement. And it would not really engage people's minds as much if you're seeing it with a statement. But with that question, it's like people are like stopping and are like, yeah, why I'm not beholding the beam in my own eye? And then answer with questions. Matthew 16:14-16, it says, and they said, some say that thou art John the Baptist, some Elias, and others Jeremias, or one of them of the prophets. He saith unto them, but whom say ye that I am? And Simon Peter answered and said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Now this is so important because they were asking, it's like, so some say you're this, some say, who are you? And if Christ would have said, well, I'm the Christ, it would have been as powerful as when actually Peter answered and said, you are the Christ. Because they were able to take more ownership of that idea, of that truth, when they actually uttered it, when they actually said, yes, you are the Christ. So the same thing, whenever we're teaching, we're able to just ask, if somebody asks you a question, it's like, you can ask them another question, and they're able to answer. You're able to let them reason. You're able to learn more. So with that, another principle, well, first of all, before I get into that, is that isn't it so amazing how the Bible can give us so many different lessons on asking questions? Like I would encourage you to go to the Bible and just look at how Christ went with questions. Actually, I remember studying about it, and actually when you look at it, Christ asked more questions than he gave statements. It's truly amazing how he always led with questions. And if Christ did it, why shouldn't we also study the science of questions and to be able to do the same thing and to have to be effective missionaries? So the last thing I wanted to say is that this is called QAQ, and this is just a practical example that something that you could put in practice in a conversation. Remember, QAQ, that's question, answer, question. Whenever you're in a conversation, whenever you're applying this, like you're asking a question, you let them answer, you ask another question. And why? Well, first of all, if you're trying to build a relationship with somebody, you want to do this because people love talking about themselves. People love talking more about things that they love, and the more you let them speak and the more you let them that's actually going to help you learn more about them. You're going to be able to, and like imagine if you have a conversation that has just few questions or not really, it's just more like just a small talk, you're not going to gain as much information or as much trust and influence with the people as when you do question, answer, question. You just lead with questions, and you don't have to like find the best questions in the world. This is not something very hard. It is simple. So remember, question, answer, question whenever you're trying to connect with somebody. And with that, that's what I wanted to share with you today. And the last picture, again, it's just again reminding us how Christ was there among all those people. And as he came as a student, he was just able to ask those questions, and he truly gained that influence with them.